Hello and welcome to Eyewitness News. My name is Tabi Sokoba, and today we're joined by the MEC for Finance in KwaZulu-Natal, but also the DA's KZN leader. And I want to say that you're the MEC for Finance for now because on the 15th of December, there's a motion of no confidence against the Premier, Ntuli, and obviously, by extension, also a motion of no confidence in his cabinet that also includes you. I mean, it's very tight in terms of the numbers in KZN, but how do you sort of reflect on that motion of no confidence?
To be so, yeah, look, I think on the 16th, the sun will rise in KZN, and I'll still be the MEC of Finance because I work on numbers and I work on the Constitution. And if you look at the Constitution, Section 2182 of the Constitution says that in order for a motion of no confidence to succeed against a Premier, then you need a majority of the number of seats in that legislature. We've got 80 seats. The MK have 37 seats. If the EFF join them, that takes them to 39. If the NFP joins them in the motion, that takes them to 40. That's not a majority. And it's the number of seats, not the number of people present. So what it then means is it would need somebody from the DA, the IFP, or the ANC to jump ship. And then it becomes very interesting because then you have 14 days in which to elect a Premier. Within that 14 days, I would imagine if there was any one of the members of the IFP or the ANC or the DA who'd voted in favour of an MK motion of no confidence, they would be recalled and replaced. So it's going to be an interesting journey in the next week.
Is it not a secret ballot?
That is at the discretion of the Speaker. So we'll have to wait and see what the Speaker decides. But the sort of mainstream media and my interaction with ANC leadership, both provincially and nationally, is they don't support the motion of no confidence.
Yes, 100%. I had an interaction with Sponsor Duma on the sidelines of the NGC, and that's what he told me. But I think obviously there is a bit of an issue with the National Freedom Party. The National Freedom Party is part of the GPU, but they've released a statement saying that, they lost faith in Premier KwaZulu Ntuli. But I do also know the politics of the NFP, that what happens nationally is not maybe what's happening on a provincial side. But from the DA side, maybe how do you sort of characterize the NFP at this current moment?
Well, go back a year and a half ago to when we negotiated the government of provincial unity. Barnes had certain demands. He wanted positions outside of the cabinet. He wanted mayoral positions. And the IFP and the ANC said no. So for Barnes, it's all about position. It's not about principle. He has a very good MEC in Mbali Shinga, who, if you look at the performance in social development, she's done an extremely good. She's appointed a CFO from Limpopo who has turned that department around financially. So I think it's all, as far as Barnes is concerned, it's all about position. It's not anything to do with principle or looking at the interests of the people of KwaZulu-Natal.
But I mean, it does look obviously a bit sketchy. Obviously, I know MFP has 1 seat, but obviously it does look unstable with the frictions that happens between the provincial in the NFP and the national.
Yeah, look, I think that's an internal matter in the NFP, which I don't really want to get involved with. What I'm saying is, MEC Shinga has proven her worth. And that's all we're worried about, is getting a government in the province of KwaZulu-Natal that can actually turn around service delivery.
And I think obviously maybe the downside of legislature or provincial is that you don't have by-elections. So this is it until 2031. This is it.
Exactly.
And I think obviously for the DA, you've made yourselves quite clear that under no circumstances would you work with the MK party or the EFF. So these are the two parties that are outside.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, just 2 weeks ago in the House, when the MK were ranting and raving about taking over government, my question to them remains, what history and governance do you have? What city does the MK govern? What province does the MK govern? Nothing.
Mm.
So they have no track record in governance. What they do have is a president who has an abysmal track record in governance. Zuma was probably the worst president we've ever had. Now, do we want that back in the province of KwaZulu-Natal? I certainly don't.
I think it obviously speaks a lot about cutting waste. And you spoke about this, about cutting those MEC perks. And I want to ask you a pointed question, because one of the reasons that the MK party advanced for this motion of no confidence against the Premier Ntuli was, they said, his frequent trips overseas. There was some issues around a New York trip where the Premier took. Just from the financial point of view, those overseas trips, have they been an issue from a financial point of view, those trips by the Premier?
I have, not just the Premier, I have raised it in Cabinet about international travel. And I've been very vocal about international travel. And I must say, the narrative that the Premier does regular international travel couldn't be further from the truth. I think in the year and a half that we've been in government, I think the Premier has travelled 2, perhaps 3 occasions. The previous Premier, Nomusa Dube, travelled, I think, monthly on international travels. So what we've done from a cabinet perspective is we've obviously looked and we've said, let's identify what are the most important events to attend, events that can actually have a return, not just junkets to travel around, and also to ensure that we plan these well ahead. Because what we've seen when we took over the government is that there's suddenly plans for an international travel trip next week. Now, you know, and I know, if you go online and you want to travel to London in 7 days' time, you're going to pay 10 times more for your flight than if you booked it 3 months ago. These are systems that we've introduced that are now working. But I certainly think it's an exaggeration to say that the Premier has been on more than 2, I think 3 at the most, as I say, international trips.
The New York trip, was it an issue for you in terms of the cost?
Well, I think that's where it started. That's where I raised the red flag and said, we need to plan these things well in advance. So, sometimes you make an error, but you need to learn from that error. Nobody's perfect. And we'd just taken over government, and, it was all a fairly new exercise just. But I can tell you now, the entire system has changed with international travel.